Thank you so much for staying with SABC News. This is SME on Point. We continue to feature female-owned small businesses this month, this Women's Month, of course. The featured business of this week epitomizes sacrifice and resilience. Gugulami Poultry House founder Khethiwe Maseko worked as a domestic worker in order to fund her business, which is now the pride of her Enkangala community. Their story is edited by Msweli. Khethiwe Maseko owns Gugulami Poultry House, a business that raises chicks from a day old until they're ready for the market at 6 weeks. Maseko says she has always wanted to run a business, but was held back by the common misconceptions around running a business.
I didn't know that one day I can maybe run a successful business, because I had this thing, if you wanna own a business, like you need a snake or something, so I was afraid of snakes. So I didn't know actually you can study entrepreneurship. I didn't know that you can be professional. It can be a profession.
After finishing matric, Maseko could not further her studies, so she opted to take a job as a domestic worker, knowing very well that her goal was to save money to study further.
I worked as a domestic worker. I will do laundry for people. I worked as a stay-in nanny. I stayed there, working there, doing laundry, cooking, everything in the house, and I would get paid.
After saving some of the money from her earnings, Maseko went on to register for an entrepreneurship course. This is where she learned a valuable lesson that one can start small and gradually grow a business. Armed with this knowledge, Maseko identified a gap in the market.
I have learned entrepreneurship and what is entrepreneurship, the qualities of being an entrepreneur. So being an entrepreneur, it has motivated me to identify the gap that was in my community. So the gap was in broilers chickens. By that time, I didn't know how to raise broilers chickens. But because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a problem solver. I said, I'm going to come with a solution. I'm going to bring fresh chicken in my community.
Like many other businesses, Gugulami Poultry House was not spared from the wrath of the COVID-19 pandemic. Maseko found herself having to donate all her chickens because she had to take care of her sickly sister, and the restrictions on the movement made it hard for her to buy feed for her chickens.
I'm not mobile, I didn't have transport, and I had to ask people to take me to town to buy my chicken's feed, and most of the people said, no, I don't have a permit, but I did have a permit because I'm an essential worker, but the driver didn't have a permit, so it was a bit of a challenge for me, because my chickens got starved, and my sister had COVID. So I had to stop people from coming to the house to buy. So at the end of the day, I had to donate all my chickens.
With all that, Maseko didn't give up. Instead, she picked up the pieces and restarted Gugulami Poultry House. She's learned valuable lessons that today she can encourage others to start small and dream big.
Have goals. You can start with the little you have. You don't need too much money. You can start a business as little as 50 Rand. You can start a business.
Diabosito, SABC News, Johannesburg. Thank you so much to Khethiwe Maseko for sharing her story with SME on Point. Please remember that we are on Facebook. Our Facebook page is at SME on Point, and we are currently even live on Instagram. Our page there is also called SME on Point. Please feel free to follow us. Have you ever heard of time banking? A time bank system which is a way of exchanging skills and resources without spending any money. So this system is particularly useful for mobilizing resources to assist communities with small businesses or even cooperatives going through an economic crisis. But I want you to understand this better from Professor Pumela Msweli, who is the Executive Dean and CEO at Unisa School of Business Leadership, who's currently joining us via Zoom. Professor Msweli, thank you so much for joining us on SME on Point. Welcome. Please do share with us about what exactly a time bank is and how did it come about from the SBL?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to you and to all your listeners. Well, when COVID hit us last year, and we realized that communities now are battling even to go to the marketplaces to buy food because of the lockdown, this idea emerged. And the time banking system at SBL, we launched it in 2 phases. The first phase is just to facilitate communities to trade with one another without money. For example, someone might have chickens, as the previous presenter has shown us, and someone else might have a transport business, or someone else might have a honey business in the community, or someone might be keeping livestock for milking milk. So if they are able to have a system of bartering within themselves, and we actually get them to form cooperatives, and we're starting with 3 communities in the Eastern Cape as our pilot project. And once we have learned our lessons, because there's a whole lot of things to learn now with the COVID. So the time banking system is really an e-commerce facility that we envisage to launch, but we're starting first with trading amongst community members.
Yeah.
And
Professor Msweli, sorry about that. Professor Msweli, I understand that it's almost, it is in fact a battering system. And I'm trying to think of our viewers who are listening to us, and they'll think, okay, there is no money involved, but then how does the business now make profit with time exchange? Okay.
So if we can bring back that civic virtue, that uvuke uzenzele in communities, then we will graduate them to the second phase. By then, they will come into our platform where they'll be able to be linked with big businesses. By the way, we also have a physical market to assist them, because we want them to learn to trade amongst themselves, and then we bring them to our marketplace, our physical market, and eventually, when there's critical mass around particular projects, to link them with other traders in Africa to sell their ware via our platform at the School of Business Leadership.
Yeah, I also know that at the School of Business Leadership, you do a lot of extensive work around the Inter-Africa Trade, Continental Free Trade Agreement that's currently happening. And this is an opportune time for small businesses to start getting themselves ready in order to expand their markets beyond the borders of South Africa. What are you doing at the SBL to prepare small businesses to start thinking that way?
So we have 4 focus areas as part of our strategy. One of the key focus area is intra-Africa trade and investment. You know, the borders of Africa open for market. So your market as a trader, as a small enterprise, is not just limited to your area.
Yes.
It's not just limited to South Africa. The market has been open for all SMEs to trade in Africa. So what we have done, we are establishing courses. We have started a research project where we are looking at the skills that SMEs need to be able to trade across the border. And with our incubators that we are locating in communities, we are able to actually exchange, provide knowledge and give them skills so that they are able to understand international trade, how it operates.
Professor Msweli, I can imagine that in a few years to come, organizations or institutions such as the SBL will start to do really interesting research about how the pandemic impacted on the small business community. So far, what have you observed about how South African entrepreneurs are swimming against the COVID tide?
We are we've observed resilience, we have observed innovation. It is incredible how, especially the youth, have come up with such innovative ideas to survive. And we want to tap into that creativity and take it to other levels. So I really have observed a whole lot of suffering. There's a whole lot of pain in our community, but there's a whole lot of creativity that we are noticing. And at the business school, we want to create a space for our youth, for our women, for our mothers, for our brothers to come in that space and test their ideas and their innovations within our rural-urban linkage business leadership clinic.
Yeah. While we're talking about testing their ideas, let's go back to the issue of the time banking and tell our viewers perhaps how they can get in touch or understand better this time banking and maybe try it out for themselves in their communities?
You know, you don't even have a system. So what we do, we have a particular system that we are using. So if you want to start a time banking system in your community, we are of the view that when you want to develop a community effectively, everyone in the community must be involved. So you do an audit of who has got what, because even if you've got a small little garden, you can do something. If you have a small little oven, you can bake bread. If you have a sewing machine, you can do something. So the community needs to come up with all sorts of products, services, even looking after kids after school or a preschool of sorts.
Yes.
So you jot down a list of these services. Then as a community, you then decide on, if I give you 1 hour of service teaching your children mathematics, that is equivalent to 5 loaves of bread or 1 chicken. And then they come up with, and that's what we are busy doing right now, is to come up with a database of how much of a service is worth how much products. If somebody is a mechanic, they can actually do a particular service, and in return, you give them a cabbage or 2 cabbages.
Right.
And the time banking system is to standardize the prices of this much service is equivalent to this much value. So what then we do, we then also create opportunities for people to do things and bank their time. So in a community, for example, you can do something for nothing. For someone and create a time credit,
right,
so that if you need something, you can go to the community and say, I've done this, I've got 100 hours worth of credit, and I want to trade this way.
Right. Professor Pumela Msweli is the Executive Dean and CEO at Unisa School of Business Leadership. Thank you so much for the insights on time banking that the Unisa School of Business Leadership has developed to help bartering of products and services against time effectively. If you want to know more, I'm sure you can go to the Unisa SBL website where you'll get more information on how you can do this. But from us, that's all from SME on Point.